Hello, I'm joined today by Peter O'Donoghue. Peter is a well-known campaigner on key issues in the County Cork area, and he's got into the headlines recently, and he's been making a bit of a furore with regards to the idea of a cashless society. Peter, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Finbar. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all, Peter. Peter, yeah, you're well known for campaigning on rural and farming issues. This is an issue that is a national issue, both urban and rural, and it's about the denial of or the refusal to accept cash in certain businesses that you have come across. You want us to fill us in on the backstory to this?
Yeah, I suppose, Finbar, I suppose we're all seeing it in today's society that cash is becoming many businesses and organizations now are not accepting cash, and affects us, as you said, in rural areas and urban areas. And I suppose a few weeks ago, I entered a local restaurant here in Cork and Glenmore called the Barn Restaurant. And upon entering the restaurant, there was a sign up in front of me that said, "We do not accept cash," and it was contactless payment only. Now, straight away, this sign grabbed my attention because I suppose I'm thinking of my grandparents or elderly people, or people with an intellectual disability, or say maybe a homeless person or a person that doesn't have a bank account. How would they dine in this facility? So that's what I was thinking when I saw that sign. But I was at a family event. I didn't want to create a hubbub, so I went in, had my meal, and then we finished the event. And then upon leaving, I just asked to speak to the manager. And I said to the manager, "Look," I said, the food was lovely, but I said, "I have a big problem with the sign that you've displayed there." And he asked me what was my problem, and I told him my thoughts. I said, "Look, you're discriminating against many cohorts in our society: elderly, people with intellectual disabilities, people without bank accounts, and lots of people." And I said, like, cash is legal tender at the end of the day. Why are you not accepting it? Anyway, what was the old saying? The customer's always right, but it wasn't in this case. He dismissed my what I had to say to him. He dismissed me as being behind the times and kind of laughed me off, really. So anyway, I went home, and a few days later, I just decided to stick a post up on Facebook, warning people of the Barn Restaurant and its cashless policy. And I just urge people to maybe take their business somewhere else than to take their business to businesses that refuse cash. And the post, it took off. It was shared thousands of times, thousands of times. And then I was contacted by local radio stations in Cork, both 96 FM and both Red FM, and they asked me to do an interview with them on my experience in the Barn Restaurant. And I did an interview with them, with both stations, and it really grabbed a lot of attention in Cork. And I remember in the Barn Restaurant, the manager told me I was in the vast minority. Well, it seemed that there was actually the vast majority of the people were on my side, and I wasn't saying that they shouldn't accept cards or shouldn't have used contactless payments, but I was just saying that, because I'm not a Luddite, but I was saying that they should accept cash as well as using contactless payments. And that was my argument. And that's the opinion of most people. Most people have no disagreement with these businesses or organizations using cards or contactless payments, but the issue is that they're refusing cash, and this discriminates against a huge section of our society. And in my opinion, discrimination can never be tolerated or accepted in any way, shape, or form in this country. So yeah, it took off in Cork anyway. The radio stations, they were talking for several days about the issue. And then I heard it being talked on News Talk, and I heard it. Even RTE, I was told, were speaking about it. And then it kind of opened up the greater conversation, because for me, this is not just about the Barn Restaurant in Cork. This is a bigger issue altogether. So you just take, for example, the GAA, the Gaelic Athletic Association. They're implementing now a cashless policy, and the GAA was brought from the ground up by the elderly of today's society, and many of them now can't even go to a GAA game because they don't have cash. So,
It's
yeah,
not only about the elderly in our society, people who don't aren't very used to using cards and using online payments and things like that. There's some people that just don't like that every single cent they pay for every time they buy something, every time they use a service, that is recorded. So that
yeah,
there's an entire litany of recording of every financial action that we take. And to me, that's a little bit big brotherish as well. And I think there's a cohort of people who would like the freedom to be able to sometimes buy something where it's not recorded. We just walked in somewhere and you bought something and you didn't have to go through this electronic process.
yeah. So for me, at this moment in time, the primary issue is the discrimination issue around it. But there are also other issues regards privacy and regards control. So, like if cash is eliminated out of society, as you said, is every transaction recorded? And then if they are, what is the implications of that? Does the babysitter who takes in maybe €25 for babysitting on one night, is that taxable income now? There's huge questions.
There are hundreds of markets around the country. I'm fond of the old markets.
Yes.
And on those markets, I know a lot of market stall workers and owners, and they pay their tax and they're genuine businesses. But imagine them having to say no, only card payments. It would destroy the market industry in this place for people who go around and maybe they're cleaning windows, they're doing all of these jobs that the big wigs don't even realize are done. They think it just magically windows get cleaned, just magically all these things happen, But the idea that would all be transferred to card payment, I think would put a lot of people out of business.
Of course, and the big winner in this Finbar, we all know who the big winner is the banks, because every transaction that's made using a card, the banks take between 1.5 and 3.5% of a fee. So say the average is 2% of a fee. So every time somebody taps, the bank take 2% of that transaction. And let's, for example, say if I bought something from you for €50, 100% of the money that you charge goes into your pocket. And then if you buy something off somebody else, or that money goes into their pocket. So 100% of the money is kept in the public domain. But now with these contactless payments, the bank is taking a fee every single transaction. And 20, 30 transactions later, what is left of the money? The banks are making huge amounts of money out of this. And there's no wonder that they're really pushing for this system to be implemented in our society.
And they've inverted it now. Up until recently, the argument would have been that it's more expensive to actually take card payments. But they're trying to switch that expense now. And I've heard a few people say that it's actually cheaper now to take card payments than to deal with cash. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I heard that argument made recently. And if it is true, then they've changed the payment mechanisms, to make it far less palatable to take cash into the future, if that's what they're doing. If it is now a case that it's more expensive to work in cash than it is a card, then they're clearly creating a scenario and an environment where cash is being forced out and cash payments have been forced out, and it's been made more beneficial now to make card payments. Have you had any thoughts of that? Has anybody argued back to you that now it's cheaper to take card payments?
Yeah, well, this have been the primary argument of the bar and restaurant owner, who would be Mr. Paul Dolan. It was 100% financial decision for him. Like, he did not give any consideration whatsoever regards to the discrimination. It was 100% business decision. And his argument was that it's cheaper for him to have a cashless policy. And I suppose one thing that I became aware of is insurance companies now are charging less insurance for businesses that do not have cash on the premises. So we all know big businesses, they work together. Banks, big insurance, they all work together. and you can bet your life that there is something going on in the background where, okay, we create the environment to, I suppose, dangle the carrot in front of the businesses to move from a cash
And the stick.
business to
And the
cashless.
stick.
Yeah. Oh, and well, the stick will be later on. Yes. Yeah.
So as your campaign progressed over the last, you didn't start off as a campaign, it started off as a conversation with a restaurant manager. But as it turned into a campaign, you were contacted by some politicians, Matty McGrath and some other rural politicians. And from there, it would appear now that legislation is ready to be submitted to the Dáil to try to stop this policy of cash only.
Yeah, so I was contacted by Matty McGrath and Michael Collins of the Rural Independent Group, and they thanked me for bringing awareness to this issue because it's been on their radar now with a while, because they are seeing many elderly people are coming to them regards this issue of cash, especially around the GA. And yeah, I suppose they committed to me that they were going to bring a motion here before Dáil to make it illegal for any business or organization to not accept cash. And on that note, I got some great news today. Matty McGrath, he phoned me and he confirmed to me that next Wednesday week, on the 8th of March, that there will be a motion put before Dáil that businesses and organizations would have to accept cash, and it would be illegal for them to not accept cash. So that motion now is confirmed to be going before Dáil. And so either way, this is going to be debated now in Dáil by the Rural Independent Group and by the governments and by all the members of Dáil. So that's
hopefully voted on in a favourable manner. I can't see Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael openly and publicly campaigning or voting with the one campaign. They'll do it as hush-hush as possible, but voting to get rid of cash payments. I think that might pee off even some of their own membership. So please God, this is something that could get legs. And I think the only thing that could destroy such legislation would be tribalism, where people might say, oh, I don't like Matty McGrath, or I don't like this one, or I'm going to vote against this because I always do vote against them. And maybe that's because I don't see it in any political party interest to vote against legislation that creates a plurality of payment methods, both cash and token types cash that we've been using now for centuries, and on the other hand, cards.
Yeah. So without doubt, the vast majority of people in Ireland, they want both systems in place. They want the contactless payment system in place, and they want cash in place as well. So if some group or if some political party was to vote against that, they will be voting against the will of the people. And they must know that they're voted in by the people, for the people, so they should be working for the people.
Yeah. I just want to show up a headline here, because in Switzerland, that specific vote is happening, but it's not being voted on just by elected politicians. It's actually been voted on by the people of Switzerland themselves. I'll just bring up this story if I can dig it out here. So this is from Le News, which is a Swiss edition. Swiss voters look set to vote on whether to change the constitution to preserve the cash version of their currency after a group focused on defending Switzerland's notes and coins announced it had collected 157,000 signatures, a figure exceeding the 100,000 required to launch a referendum, reported RTES. Of the 157,422 signatures, the Swiss Liberty Movement, the group behind the vote, claims to have collected 111,197 and have already been validated, it said. So this is a vote because they have a far more direct democracy in Switzerland, where if you can collect a petition of 100,000 signatures, automatically there'll be a referendum on something. That referendum is happening in Switzerland. I believe, if not all Germany, there's regions, at least in Germany, where cash payment is king and where it's illegal to refuse cash payment. And that's the key issue. It's about, in Ireland, it's about the refusal of legal tender. What's been your understanding? I know you've been looking into the Swiss experience a little bit. What's been your understanding from Switzerland?
Yeah, so I just looked vaguely into Switzerland, what's happening over there. And as you said, there's over 150,000 people now after signing a petition that they want cash to be continue to be used in Swiss society, to be preserved and protected. So I suppose in Switzerland they have a different style of democracy than we have here in Ireland, and I would say it is actually a very good style of democracy where the people of Switzerland actually get to have a big say in how legislation is passed. And so in Switzerland, if there is a petition signed with over 100,000 people, it's mandatory then that this goes to a referendum. And now they're having a referendum on this issue in Switzerland. And yeah, we'll see what the results of that referendum would be. But outside of the cash issue, I think it's a fantastic way. It's a very democratic way to do things. It's probably a system that we should look into using here. I would suggest it would be. Yeah.
You have a petition on the go as well, Padraig. Unfortunately, we don't have a direct democracy here. So your petition will only hopefully be able to nudge politicians in the right direction, but it has no legal strength in itself. The petition reads, to the Houses of the Oireachtas, today more and more businesses and organisations in Ireland are implementing a policy of card and contactless payments only for financial transactions. This policy cannot be accepted in Ireland as it is discriminatory policy which discriminates against many various cohorts and sections of people in our society who, when it comes to paying for a service or product, don't use contactless payment methods but use cash instead. The people discriminated due to this policy include many of our elderly, homeless, intellectually disabled, recent immigrants, and people in general who might not have a bank account, credit card, or smartphone for their own personal and private reasons. Whilst cards and contactless payment systems have many benefits for both businesses and customers and to continue being used, cash must also be accepted as legal tender as well in this country. A payment policy that enacts discrimination of any group or individual in our society cannot be tolerated. The people of Ireland who have signed this petition demand that the Irish government implement legislation which will make it illegal for any business or organisation to refuse cash where any financial transaction is to take place. We demand that this legislation, which will put an end to the discrimination outlined above, be legislated immediately. Discrimination of any nature can never be tolerated in our country. Signed, the Irish people. So you have that out there now, and it's not doing bad. It's on 1,179 signatures. That's available on change.org. Is there any other places that people could get access to that petition, Peter?
Yeah, so that petition, I haven't really pushed it too hard outside, but I've just shared it on my Facebook page. So you can, if you look me up on Facebook, you'll find it there. And it's been shared online. Now, I do intend to start getting out onto the streets with that petition and to get physical signatures on the streets. I do think that it would be hugely popular and the vast majority of people would sign it. So I would just say for people to sign it and to share it as well online. And then if somebody wants to help me in sharing it out in the streets in their own local communities, I would appreciate that very much, because that's what I intend to do. I intend to get out into my local towns and villages amongst the people and ask people to sign it. Sometimes
petitions can seem a little bit pointless in Ireland, but this does have a point because the legislation is being placed before the Dáil, what the petition is asking for. And so a significant amount of signatures, if the TDs who are voting on that into the future are aware that there's a petition out there that's been signed by X amount of 100,000 people, it could really influence how they vote in the chambers.
Yeah, it could have a huge influence. And ultimately, this is a legislation issue. Many people are, I suppose, understandably complaining about the bar and restaurant and businesses like that. But it's in law, they do have a legal entitlement to refuse cash as long as they have it advertised on their premises. So while I would say this is morally wrong, legally they're entitled to do this. So it's up to our politicians now to close that loophole and to bring in legislation which will make it illegal for businesses and organisations, including the GAA, to refuse cash for payment.
Okay. And Peter, if anybody wants to follow you in your campaign on this issue more, or even other campaigns you're involved in, how would they do that?
I suppose what I primarily use is Facebook, just Peter O'Donoghue on Facebook. That would be my primary, that's what I use primarily for my campaigns.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, Peter, we're going to finish up now. we're going to be coming back to you on this issue and on other issues, because we have spoken to you before, and I've no doubt we'll speak to you again. You're the kind of guy who can't see you wrong with wanting to right it in your local community. So I'm sure there'll be other campaigns that we'll be speaking to you about into the near future. In the meantime, thanks for joining us. And folks, anybody watching this, if you can sign that petition, it's in everybody's best interest to have a plurality of payment methods so that everybody in our society is involved and has access to society. And if you don't have a bank account, if your card, for some reason, you're not being issued a card, anything like that, you're actually cut out of society, real society. So it's important that we have that plurality of payments. Peter, thanks for joining us. We'll speak to you again soon.
Yeah, thank you very much, Finbar, and thanks for all the great work you do up there in Compass Media.
Thank you, Peter.